just finished layer 1 of my abstract watercolor. You want to begin by creating 3 layers. So layer 1, I did a wet on wet wash, and now we are on part 2. And now that it's dry, I can really think about another technique that I'm going to add within my painting. Remember, you want to have at least 3 or more. By the way, when you're using your hair dryer, be safe. Don't keep it near the water, of course. And I always unplug it when I'm done. I just like to be safe. So I'm now going to start on the next layer. I did a wet on wet wash. I did not do too much of a flat wash. I did a little bit of the drop color. This is a good place to do maybe some gradations, or maybe you could do a little bit more dry brush. So I'm still using a wider brush, and in this layer I just want to build upon my second layer. So we really want to see that we're building the surface here, because we are going to be drawing onto the surface a little bit, and we want to create some interesting areas. So we want to create a variety of these watercolor techniques throughout. We also want to see that our color is blending well. You had to think about your color choices in terms of the mood. So this painting is really kind of, in the beginning creating itself, and then you're going to have a little more control with it when you kind of start adding your drawings into it, your abstractions. So I'm going to now, I have a lot of my blue and my green, so I'm going to now add a little bit of a flat wash back here. Now I could have started this in the beginning, but I want to create layers, and the reason why I wanted it to dry was so that I could paint on top of my sections that I already painted. So this is just a very simple flat wash on top of some of the blue that I've already painted. I'm letting it blend with the edges there. Now, if I had not let this dry, then some of that blue would have bled into the purple, which is why you want to really let it dry before you do your next layer. I'm also going to add a little bit of texture, and I'm going to go into this corner here because I'm seeing a lot of potential with adding even maybe some dry brush, but I want to get a little more into this corner here. So I think it's important to really turn it around and see how it looks, step back from it. But don't be afraid of experimenting and seeing what happens. Now, I know I said I was going to use all warm colors, but I might just choose, and they're all analogous, by the way, so I'm using analogous colors. I might even I might even just go with one extra color just to add a little accent color, so you might decide to do that as well. And I am going to try a little bit of this orange because I know it'll be kind of subtle, but I also am going to do a little bit of texture with that. So I'm drying my brush. I'm going to do this orange here and just add a little bit of my dry brush using the tip. I just wanted to add a little bit of interest in this area to give it my painting a little more variety here. And usually when I paint, I like to have music on just to get me going with it. And what I want you to notice here is that since I let this dry, right, then it's really helping me to paint these layers. And I really feel like watercolors are very instinctive. And sometimes they just, like I said, create themselves, watercolor paintings, depending on the style that you're doing. We're not doing a landscape or something realistic, but I went with my instincts on this and I added just a little hint of orange in there. Even though my dominant colors are really like the mood or tone of my painting, it's okay if you add a little accent color here and there, as long as, you know, it's not something that's going to blend and make a muddy color. If it's already dry, then it's going to work a little better. So, for example, if I had green on top of red, it's going to make a brown muddy color. So you want to make sure that you're not doing that. So I'm going to use a smaller brush now. Now, some of you might just have one size brush, but again, this is my second layer, building the surface of my painting. You want to look at it to see, you know, like, do I have enough to pull this out? Am I creating layers and depth in my painting, in my abstraction? So I feel like I could definitely use some darker values. So just like in drawing, we want to create some depth with those values, and I'm going to take a green on top of my purple here, over here, and I'm going to do a bit of a gradation here. So I'm just starting with my dark, and then I'm going to let it get lighter, just adding a little bit more water to it as I go, and just gradually getting lighter there. So I just did a very subtle gradation there. And I feel like this should kind of blend a little bit better up here, so I am going to add a little bit of my purple, make it a little bit darker up here, blend the purple and green. And I feel like once I get to my next layer, things are going to start getting a little bit darker. But I want to go into some of my edges, which is what I would like to see you do. You know, even if you just kind of darken in some of these edges around here. This one turned out really nicely here. I want a little more of that happening throughout my painting. And this is a process. You definitely shouldn't rush along with it, but you should definitely have a little bit of a plan in your mind of where you're going once you start painting. And I like that I'm creating this sort of like center part here, but I still am applying my colors throughout. I want to think about my edges here because I have some white areas. Like, what am I going to do with them? So I'm going to start adding a little bit more texture with my dry brush throughout. And then I'm going to do another wet watercolor wash, wet on wet, just to create another layer. So I'm just playing right now. I'm just playing along, seeing where it goes. And I find it interesting just to take the dry brush on top of different areas, and I'm gonna just play a little bit with that. This almost looks like a cloud there. So I'm going with it. And remember, since this is abstract, this is non-objective, so we're really, anything that we suggest in our painting is really going to be symbolic through texture or symbolism in our when we add the marker to this. So I'm just adding some darker areas, and I'm going to, so I really focused on some dry techniques here, and I'm going to do another little wash, quick wash over here. I'm also going to take a little bit more time. So I'm really building up the layers. Like I said, this is layer 2. I'm going to do another edge where I let it drip down and make sure I have enough water here on my painting. And sometimes I just go like this and I just let it fall. Add a little water on the edge, see where it goes. Let it go in different directions and tilt it around. I've also created another edge there. I'm going to try another one on this side. and let it go. Now, okay, see what happens when you let it go in different directions, what kind of interesting areas you create here. All right, so I feel good about this. I want to just add a little bit more here. And then I'm gonna dry it one more time. I'm gonna do my last layer.